Hi, everyone. This is Max. I'm in Berlin, joined today by the members of the European Time Zone Zoom Meetup group, which is what we're calling it until either myself or somebody proposes a snappier name. And we're going to be reading John Ashbery's This Room from 2000. I'll start by reading the poem and then we'll get into the discussion. This room. The room I entered was a dream of this room. Surely all those feet on the sofa were mine. The oval portrait of a dog was me at an early age. Something shimmers, something is hushed up. We had macaroni for lunch every day except Sunday, when a small quail was induced to be served to us. Why do I tell you these things? You are not even here. Wow. So we have enough people today that we can do a very ModPo style exercise in which I will assign a different line or word to each person, and we will work through the poem sequentially from the top. And when we get to your assigned part, you'll have the chance to make a comment, and it can be something very simple, just generating some associations around a word or a line, or even just giving a very basic synopsis of what is taking place in a specific moment of the poem. And this is a useful method because it allows us to get really nitty-gritty with the text and to get back to the mechanics of how a somewhat or perhaps a deceptively simple poem works. In this case, I think, well, I mean, this is John Ashbery. So for those of you who know John Ashbery or who have already encountered some of the John Ashbery poems on the syllabus, maybe even this one, it's, you know, deceptive simplicity is kind of his whole thing. So it'll be useful, I think, for us to really get in and break this poem apart, so to speak. So I'm going to go around and assign parts. We have the title, This Room, which we will give to Stanley.
Huh.
All right.
Got it.
Great. So you'll have the title, Stanley. Then we have the first line, the room. You know what, let's divide that first line into two lines. No, let's do the full first line. The room I entered was a dream of this room. Jackie, that will be you. And then we have the second line, which will be yours, Yunya. Surely all those feet on the sofa were mine. Yunya, that's you. Then we have the oval portrait. What a mysterious fragmentary line. Nancy, you have the oval portrait of a dog was me at an early age. And you have the rest of that sentence. Hannah, that's you. You're the fourth line. Something shimmers, something is hushed up. Do I want to, let's divide that one. Something shimmers. Lee, you have something shimmers. Which means, Mark, you have something is hushed up. Hushed up. We had macaroni for lunch every day. Suzanne, you have that line, which is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, the sixth line. And the seventh line, except Sunday, when a small quail was induced. Oof, that's a weird one. Api, that's yours.
Okay.
To be served to us. Why do I tell you these things? Well, I guess Api, you have except Sunday when a small quail was induced to be served to us. So I can give you the whole
Okay.
bit there, which means that the question Why do I tell you these things? That's for you, Mary. And that leaves Caroline with "you are not even here." Last line for Caroline. Okay. We all have our assignments. We're all good. Okay, great. So let's start from the top. Stanley, this room. What's going on? Tell us about the title.
Okay, can you hear me okay?
Yeah.
I've got everybody on small, so I don't. Okay, the title, this room. Wow, he's obviously he's in a lucid dream state. There's lots going on in the room, right down to the small quail. I mean, is it a one-room apartment where everything is done in that room? The sofa, the portrait. You've got so much crammed into the next two verses in this room that this is my first time doing this, you know.
So,
and when you said I get to be first, I don't get to hear the other people. I don't know that much about John Ashbery, but I do know what
I want to say that this is approaching the poem in its constituent parts this way. This is really the spirit of the exercise. So not really knowing anything about what anybody else is going to say, and even like resisting at times the kind of cumulative reading is really important for the method, I think. So just shooting off associations is totally fine. And I will just throw you the classic Mod Pro softball question of what is the word "this" doing here?
Well, it is really accentuating the fact that there is one room and the small quail gets introduced, you know.
Where is this room? Where is this room? This room.
Yeah, well, no, it obviously he entered in with a dream. So it is a lucid dream. The room itself is
so the room is a lucid, so this room that we're in or that he's in is a lucid dream. And could it then be, is the lucid dream the space of the room? Is it the poem? Is the poem this room?
I want to see the window. I want to see the trees and the garden and things like that. But, you know, obviously the feet that are on the sofa were mine. All of the feet.
Okay. So we have we are aware, at least from the get-go here, that the poet is in a room or is talking about a room of some kind. Okay,
I'm sorry, you garbled. What was the poet is in the real?
Sorry, no, we have a sense from the get-go that the poet is in a room. This room. The poet is speaking from this room, perhaps.
Yes.
Right. Okay, great. So Jackie, we'll turn to you in the first line. The room I entered was a dream of this room. So we have this room repeated, but there's also now suddenly a second room. These are just prompts. I don't mean to ask you a leading question.
Yeah. It's also the first time I do this. It's a very insecure feeling, Stanley. But it's all right, because all you can do is think. So the first thing I think of is it's a setup line. It's the start of the poem. So this is it's the setup, right? It's once upon a time. It's the once upon a time of the poem. Mm-hmm. And the second thought that I had was strange, but is it needed? Because you have a lot of poems that we've been reading where the title is part of the poem. And of course, when there's a title, it's part of the poem. So imagine if you read this room, surely all those feet on the sofa were mine. So there's obviously a reason why he started with this setup line. And then you try to think of all of those things. Okay, why does he write it? He writes it for a reason. And a room like this, it seems, or it could feel like when you have been away for a very long time from a house, from your apartment, from where you live, and you go back into the house, the room, this space, this neighborhood, it all has this vague, strange, I don't remember it that way feeling to it. So it makes, and the rest of the poem seems to support that idea that it's not that he's entering it for the first time after a long time.
Okay. And so you're reading into the dream-like quality here, something
Or
like
the fact that when you go back someplace, I went back to my old neighborhood and I saw the street I lived in. It looked nothing like what I remembered. And it freaked me out. It freaked me out. There was something wrong. The street was different. This house was different. Everything was different. And it was the street I grew up on. So maybe it's why everything is so odd to him, or
So
us.
In your understanding, are the two rooms in this first line the same? This room, or the room I entered, is it the same as this room? It just is a dream-like version of it, kind of describing the sort of the uncanny that you're describing here, the kind of dream-like uncanny of returning to a place that is the same, technically the same, but doesn't quite feel the same.
If I had a guess, because otherwise you would put that, but nobody would put that, because that room would mean another room, but this room seemed to be the same room, or not. I don't know. The room I entered was a dream of this room was a dream of, yeah. And what is a dream of this room?
That's a good question.
What is a dream of this room? Yeah.
I think that is the ultimate riddle of the poem that I think we'll try to crack at the end. But for now, let's move on to Yunya, who can tell us maybe what's happening in the second line. Surely all those feet on the sofa were mine. That's a weird line.
Yeah. Well, I think the first thing is probably the first word, surely. And I think that already says a lot about the poem, because it really implies the speaker is really not sure about it. Because surely is mostly the word that you say when you are uncertain about something, but you are trying to convince yourself, but surely all those feet on the sofa were mine. So yeah, I think that's the first thing, that the speaker is very uncertain. And then the fact that he says all those feet, which to me kind of implies that it's more than two. So it's probably not like only one person in the room, but maybe a few guests that have been there. And to add on to that, what Jackie was saying, that it's kind of, it seems like he's come back to a childhood home, or some place where he's been already, that maybe he doesn't know those people, and he's trying to convince himself, well, it's probably my feet, to make himself feel more comfortable in a space that used to be so familiar.
That's great. The reading of Shirley's, I think, really helpful for bringing out more of this kind of uncanny thing, that the dreamlike uncanny thing that we've been tracing so far. And I think it's interesting how, especially in your account of the word surely, how something like how this affirmation of certainty in fact signifies a lack of certainty. When you say surely, it really means that you're not sure, which is again a kind of uncanny thing with language, right? Where it's like, I think you can say one thing and mean the absolute opposite thing, and that's such a I've caught myself doing this all the time in English, where I say something like yeah, no, or no, yeah, right, which I think other English speakers, perhaps East Coast Americans, might be very familiar with. And this way that like the we all understand that the word actually means the opposite of what it is, in a curious way. Hannah, no, sorry, Nancy. Oops, Nancy, that brings us to you, the oval portrait.
Oval portrait. I thought immediately of a pair of oval portraits that hang in my parents' dining room of people from a long, long time ago that we all came from. And so it made me think, of course, then of ancestors, of ghosts long gone, of gilded frames, sort of. And then the idea that it's a portrait of a dog then made me think of Man Ray and how he isn't he the one who took photographs of dogs dressed up, dogs that were dressed up like people?
Right. Yeah.
I might be wrong, but I thought they were Weimaraners. Or maybe he painted, I don't know. Anyway, and I also wanted to say the thing that I really love about John Ashbery's poetry is that every poem has like one incredible line, at least one, like where you're just like, how did he get out of 4 words that most incredible thing? Something shimmers, something is hushed. It's like for me, the whole poem kind of rotated around that line, and yeah.
For sure.
The secret smudge at the back of your soul from the other, that there's just always this one thing where he takes his whole poem and he throws all these words around and then he goes, whack, and here it is. It's beautiful.
I think that's a good, accurate description of the Ashbery and Je ne sais quoi, where there are these like crucial lines, like the hushed line that we'll get to. But for now, I think the oval portrait, the oval shape. So you're saying that the oval shape signifies something old fashioned to you because, I mean, an oval portrait, yeah, it's not something you really encounter too much in a contemporary way, right?
Yeah.
An oval is such an interesting shape. I wonder. I think we should hold on to that idea of the oval. And
yeah, that's right. Because oval is really, it's an old shape. It's a shape that we don't actually use particularly anymore. I mean, in home decor anyway, an oval mirror with brushes and combs on it is very Victorian. So it really feels to me like he's speaking of the past with the oval frame, the whole oval. Yeah.
I think that's an interesting observation about like it being a sort of Victorian shape. I think there's a Victorian Ashbery kind of thing that happens sometimes. Let's move to Hannah with the 4th line of a dog. So the portrait of a dog was me at an early age. So you have the rest of Nancy's sentence here.
Yeah, I mean, first of all, there's 2 things going on in the line. There's the form and there's the content. And the first thing that stands out is the form. Like, why did he start the line of a dog rather than was me at an early age? He could have had the oval portrait of a dog, was me at an early age. So I think the form mirrors what's going on in the line. It's jarring, it's disrupted. So you find, when I was reading it, the first time I was reading it, I went, the oval portrait of a dog was me. I was confused. It tumbles through the line because of where the line break is. And then he's got the dog was me. So obviously it's going through the surrealism of the whole poetry, of the whole poem. For me, that's where the poem really nails that we're in the surreal realm. We're in a dream, and that happens in dreams, doesn't it? Suddenly you find you have mutated into somebody else in the dream, and it's not why at an early age? Why is the dog him at an early age?
Right.
It's not. Does that mean it's a puppy? He was like a puppy, or is it saying that he didn't feel fully human at an early age, or what exactly is he saying about why is the dog an early age him, and who would paint him as a dog? So there's also who's the author of who's the person who painted the poem, painted the picture, and who's the person who hung it there, and why has he noticed it today in this dream? There's so many questions. It's, to me, you could just carry on unpacking, which also feels dreamlike.
That's I think your reading of the line break is spot on. It's it absolutely shares in this uncanny, that's the word I'm going to keep using, this uncanny dream experience of being like, oh, there's that oval portrait of a dog, which is me. You know, this kind of like, it's so well done in this instance. And I think that there's also something happening here with the recognition, sharing in the recognition with the dog that's very similar to the second line that Yunia glossed for us, where there's this this way in which everything in this space is suddenly like speaking to you and becoming about you and part of you. That's also very dreamlike in a way, where
Yeah,
where
I
everything
hadn't-
is super significant about you.
yeah. Well, I had a thought as well, going back to the line with the feet, now we've got the dog's feet. So it's like the dog's feet on the sofa. There's also that kind of, there's a play with
Right,
that,
and,
maybe, I don't know.
and all those 4 feet of the dog rather
Yeah.
than the 2 feet of a person. Yeah.
Yeah.
Right. And in a, obviously you're not supposed to put your feet on the sofa, and the dog
Yeah.
should definitely not be putting its feet on the sofa, right?
So then it might inference that this is where he lived as a child, maybe this room. Maybe this is a childhood room that comes back into his dreams. I get this a lot. I always dream about the house that I was brought up in, as we do.
So Lee, something shimmers.
Yes, something shimmers.
Something shimmers. Oh.
Yeah, I was thinking like the something, like it's unspecified. It's really not clear what it is. So that's very dreamlike to me. It fits the dream logic kind of thing from the previous lines. I was thinking from when you're dreaming, you can't always see clearly what's going on, but it also doesn't matter because it's a dream. So you just go along.
Right.
And you accept everything, even if it doesn't make any sense. So I was thinking maybe the shimmer is like the real world logic. So consciousness is just right there on the surface.
So there's something that's interesting, because I wanted to, my follow-up was going to ask you what you thought the something was, and I like that you're running with the ephemeral connotations of shimmering to suggest that the something is something that's also quite ephemeral. Perhaps something like logic, as you said, or something that's you can't quite put a finger on. It's not like a glass that's shimmering in the light or something. It's something perhaps like that's at the edges of the reality of or the state of mind of this room or something. Mark, something is hushed up.
Yes, let me get back to the portrait of a dog was me at an early age. I remember that a long time ago, somebody told me that there is a special phenomenon that dog owners and dogs at a certain time look alike. They look the same. They develop into that particular image, and maybe that is what he finds out. Oh, look at the dog. The dog looks like me. And that is something that shimmers. Something is hushed up. What we have here is a kind of parallelism. It is an anaphora. Something is repeated, but it's not really a parallelism because shimmers is active in the active voice and is hushed up. That's passive. So something is done. Something shimmers. He finds out something, but he isn't really sure what it is. And still something is going on that prevents him from finding out whether that really is the truth. What's interesting is this kind of alliteration. It's not really an alliteration. Okay, something is repeated, you have the S, but shimmers is also close to the S. The S sounds. What animal makes S sounds? It's the snake. Something that tells the truth. The truth is coming out here. Something shimmers. He's not sure what it is, and still it is not really said.
That's I like that reading of the serpentine sibilance of this line here, and that fits. I think this biblical notion of the snake fits with this account or this reading that you're offering of something true breaking in, and it goes a little bit to what Lee was saying a second ago about perhaps what's shimmering something here is the real world, the world outside of the dream of this room or the dream of the poem, and it's such a dream like dynamic for the stimuli and of the real world to be somehow to kind of shimmer, but also be suppressed in different ways, right? To be hushed up. I think we've all had an experience where you're dreaming and your alarm clock goes off, but it's in your dream, it's like the fire bell or something, right? Like something where the dream is able to incorporate the external stimuli and make it actually part of that fabric of that fantasy that you're in, or that alternate reality that you're currently in. I think that something being hushed up too makes me think of the Victorian aspect of the oval portrait that Nancy pointed us to a second ago, that there's this kind of hushing up, right? That you're in a room and people are like, we were talking, we were just talking about you, and so now we're all shushing, which is something that happens all the time in Victorian novels, which are like all about people gossiping about each other. That's all that really happens.
And the speaker doesn't really recognize what it is. He has some problems with his perceptions, and this is also something true for the reader. It looks like a parallelism, but it isn't. You have two different structures. You have the active structures, something shimmers, something becomes active, you get the meaning, and yet something else is done. You have the passive construction.
That's the active passive there. That's I think that's also that's an interesting dynamic to keep in mind. Let's turn to Suzanne for We Had Macaroni for Lunch Every Day.
Yeah, so we're starting a stanza, and it really shifts here in this stanza, because the dream is kind of left behind or reflected upon, or we are taking notice of what might happen after a dream. And this is a reflection, it's a memory. I read it as a memory, but it's a real matter of fact sentence. We had macaroni for lunch every day. So anything can happen after that sentence. It's quite surprising in the context, because this is not what we would expect, this kind of memory. And of course, what comes after that makes it even more surprising in a way. But we had refers to a we. Now we have plural. There's no speaker I. There's the we, probably the family, but can be read as anything. But it looks like it's the family, macaroni for lunch, and then comes surprising every day. Well, what kind of choices are these for a family? And what does this memory do to the speaker? Is he reflecting? Is he judging it? Or is he just putting it out matter of fact to have the reader or anybody who receives that? We get to that at the end, who receives that knowledge. For lunch, which is the lunch, is also a specific time every day, which means after we get that, we didn't get it on Sunday, 6 days of the week. But now it's 7 days a week, because we are not there yet. Every day means 7 days of the week. And macaroni, well, that's pretty bland, I would say. Not macaroni and cheese or spaghetti. It's just a term for a simple dish, a real simple and everyday dish. Yeah.
It's very it's very, as you say, it's very simple food. I think macaroni has interesting connotations in an American context, especially with the Yankee Doodle song. Yankee Doodle put a feather in his cap and called it macaroni, which is but I think that's a slightly different usage of the word macaroni. I don't think it means quite, doesn't mean like pasta. But still, I think macaroni is such a fascinating word, and you can't use that word without bringing to bear all kinds of like
a context. They're bringing in the context. For instance, the Italian, that's the first thought that has. It's an Italian context that he puts out there. Belongs to a certain group, of immigrants, maybe.
Right.
I don't know when macaroni was adopted for everybody in the United States, because it's such a common dish.
So to go to the we, you're right to point out that the speaker has changed here. We go from I to we, and so you're understanding the we as part of this memory of family, which flows from the feeling we get of this room being the room where the speaker grew up or spent some part of his childhood or something like that. And now he's suddenly remembering, and I'm saying he because I assume it's John Ashbery, he's suddenly remembering, oh yeah, that's right, we had macaroni every single day when I lived here, meaning that's like what my mom and dad served us. Although the question of service gets complicated in the next line, which Api will talk about for us, when a small quail was induced to be served to us. What do you make of that?
To me, it was the strangest line of them all, I guess, because I was like, induced, what? First of all, I had to Google what a quail was. So I figured, or I found out it was a bird. And it was a bird, or that it is a bird that it would be kind of it has like a connotation of being a luxury to me, because I think that I have it connected with like quail eggs, and that would be like a super luxurious thing to eat, to have. And it was induced to be served to us, so they like talked the bird into being eaten, or and I think that in the whole space of this, in this surreality of the whole poem, it's like the ultimate crazy. I kind of imagined the macaroni in the like previous line. That's like, to me at least, it's a very like childlike a dish. So I kind of like imagine the parents being like, can we have this and can we have that, and the children being like, no, we want macaroni. And then on Tuesday, no, we want macaroni every single day. And then the Sunday comes, and then the parents being like, no, we have this time. You're getting a dish, okay? Something that has actual meat in it. And so I kind of imagine it like a story of that. But yeah, it's like the quote was induced. I think that all of the poem is this kind of serial space of things constantly changing shape, which would go back to the oval portrait, or dogs turning into whoever me is. Something is hushed up, this kind of suppressed. I also thought of like the scene being seen by a child who would like enter a room of adults, and there's always something unspoken, always something that the child would kind of sense, I think, in the room, but we just never said out loud. So it feels like it is hushed up, something, and a quail was induced to be served to us. Was it induced to be like served as a dish, or was it induced to be served like in service? Which one is it? I don't know.
I think I really like that you ran with the childlike the meanings here. and elaborate a little bit more on like, you know, what it means to be a kid in an adult space or something where things are hushed up, or you know, the adults are having their conversation, you're not a part of it, something like that. And where you're, you know, what you eat is kind of dictated for you. I think that the induced is such a complicated word here, such a crazy verb indeed. A quail was induced to be served to us. There's so much happening right there. It's such a crazy way of saying, and on Sundays we ate quail, right? Rather, it's a quail was induced to be served to us, which I think is a little bit, it shares in this topsy-turvy passive active thing that Mark started to draw out a second ago, or it makes it even more topsy-turvy, this idea that things can do and things can be done too. And here, you know, the quail is kind of both. The quail is, you're inducing the quail and you're saying like, okay, quail, it's time to be eaten. And the quail is like, all right, I'm ready. Here I go on the plate, or whatever it is. And right, it's like, it's these various forms of activity and passivity that also strikes me as very dreamlike in a way that you know, what you're doing versus what's being done versus what's happening to you, you know, all these different registers here are kind of all contained in that one rather wild line.
I think I also now that I'm thinking more about what Mark was saying before with the active passive, I think that to me, like the combination of quail and was induced to be served to us, it has a kind of like sense of a ceremony, maybe. Like it's a little ceremonious. You know, like that would be, because everything in the poem is kind of like out of proportion, you know, like oval portraits, kind of, you know, macaroni being kind of shapeless, kind of, you know, everything is kind of distorted. And so then, you know, if we go with the like dreaminess of it, then all of those passives are kind of, you know, it is to be done, to be taken, blah 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 blah. Yeah, it has it sounds a little ceremonious to me. You know, a little grand, because it's a quail, not just a chicken. You know, it's not fried chicken; it's a quail.
It's a quail, right? And it's been induced to be served.
Yes, to be served. You know, to. Well,
let's turn to Mary with the crucial question of the poem. Why do I tell you these things? Mary, what's happening here?
Okay, I think at this point he stepped out of his memory of the dream here, because then he's talking to the you. Now, I'm not sure the you could be himself in dialogue, myself and me, or it could be a person who has to listen to the dream and doesn't really care. Most people really don't care about your dream unless they're a psychiatrist. Yeah. And normally we have a necessity to tell a dream, which is often a narrative. In fact, sometimes scientists say they go back to sleep as fast as they can so they can continue the dream and get their idea together. So it's not completely clear here. Why do I tell you? You. Is he recalling himself because he's writing this? Or is he really talking to somebody, a reader, listener? And poets often talk to somebody like this, because remember how we said that, you know, the wonderful poem, I don't exist if you're not here. So he could be talking to a hopeful reader. And then another thing that's very interesting, I think, it's not a narrative. Often dreams, as I said before, are kind of narratives, but this isn't a narrative. It's like a jumble sale. Everything, your mind mines your memory, in the sense of a miner going into a shaft or coal or something. So his mind, his memory, and all kinds of odd things have come together. And then why would an outsider, or even himself, as listening to himself, be interested in these things? That's it. That's my idea.
No, that's absolutely fantastic, and I think you followed through wonderfully on all of the surreal dreamlike stuff we've been bringing up by taking this question very seriously and saying like, yeah, it's true. You know, why you can have the craziest dream, but does anybody else really care? I mean, everybody has crazy dreams. It's not, you know, John Ashbery is not the first person to dream of something so wild as that. In fact, it's super relatable. You know, what he's talking about is almost like banal, despite how surreal it is when we talk about it in you know, the waking world. But where was I going to go with that? Oh yeah, so you talked about there's this almost depth plumbing thing, like you talked about miners going into a mine shaft. And here I think we have, you know, a very similar spatial metaphor, which is the room, right? He's entering the room and he's looking around, and it's the room of memory or the room of the dream. And he's kind of going in, he's taking a look around, and he's reporting back the things that are stored in there in a way. And after he starts, you know, he reports back some of it, and he asks himself, he has this very self-conscious moment of like, well, why am I even telling you these things? And the answer is, Caroline, you are not even here.
She is.
Yeah, which is such an interesting way to exit the poem, because we've only just met you in the line before, and we don't know who you is. I don't think you is part of a family, because they have to be told these things, so they don't know about the macaroni and the quail. That this is being introduced to them, and then he kind of pulls the rug out from under our feet because you are not even here. So this is an address to a you who's not there, and to me it kind of resonates back to that line, surely all those feet. There's that wonderful contradiction that this is an address to someone who isn't there.
And that someone, is it us, the reader? We were not there when he wrote the poem, right? So
yeah, it could be.
Yeah. So, and he is speaking to us here. I mean, well, it feels like it when you're reading it. Why am I telling you this? You were not even here. And it's true. I mean, but it's complicated because we are here, but we weren't there.
We weren't there when he was writing the poem.
Right, we were not
there when he was writing the poem, but now we are here to read this room of wonderful words.
Right, to enter the room with him in a way. So we are there though, right? And it's quite complicated. And this is very Ashbery, I think, to not really be sure what he means, and also to not be sure. I don't know what he thinks, whether he thinks this is all worthwhile or not. Like, I don't think that really comes across. Like, it's not a similar poem to this. I mean, similar in that it has a kind of similar, like, surprise ending, is the Sid Corman poem that we read. It isn't for want of something to say, but to detain you, to keep you here as long as you are, as long as you are. That's not the full poem, but it's most of it. And that has a similar, like, I think that poem is more clearly, like, has a more clearly positive attitude about the fact that the reader isn't here, but like, we're, you know, when you read the poem, you're now, you know, you're with the poet in a different kind of space and these kinds of things. But I don't think Ashbery is so optimistic. I think that this, like, why am I telling you this? You aren't even here. It's such a deflating ending to the poem. So we can read it as this like Sid Corman thing where it's like, you were not even here, but actually you were here all along because you just read the poem. But I don't know if that's really what Ashbery needs to say either. And I think that that's what makes it it makes this poem kind of complicated in terms of reading it as a meta poem, which is what I was just trying to do there for the last minute. Does anybody have any final thoughts on this?
Yeah, well, to sum it up, back to the title, you know,
Yeah.
this room, he's bringing us into his lucid dream, his whole feeling in two paragraphs. And that is really incredible. And to bring in the international flavor of all of our perspective talks about it is really cool. This is great, yeah.
Max and group, when I saw you are not even here, I got the impression if this were a poem I had written, he was going to wrinkle it up and pop it into the waste paper basket. After writing this, you're not even here. It's like well, nobody's going to care. Huh? I don't know. I think he'd wrinkle it up and throw it into the basket.
Hannah, did you want to add something?
Yeah, I had quite a different interpretation of the you. So that's what so I'm thinking the reason we've got two verses is because there's a deliberate break between the first bit and the second bit. So it gets interrupted when you get something hushed up. Something is hushed up. And I think the next two lines are kind of, okay, I'm going to behave now, but I'm going to do it with a little bit of sarcasm. You know, I'm going to say we had macaroni cheese, we had this every day. And of course, he probably didn't, but then we're going to, the inducing the quail to be served is almost like it's a dig. You did this thing and it's you not taking responsibility and you did this quite horrible thing, you know. And then the reason it's going too far, which is why he says, why am I saying this? You know, why am I saying this? You're not even here. I think it's somebody who's dead, who's in the family that he wants to challenge, but what's the point? They're gone. They're not even here. And like you're saying, he could just throw it away because what is the point? And yet this dream, this room he's haunting his dreams. There's something there that shimmers, that's uncomfortable, that's not quite right, that's discomforting, and that makes him not even quite himself. He's a dog.
That's a very good reading, because it's convincing, because you also skirt the meta poetic reading, which is where I went to, because that's what we're prompted to do in Modpo when we have things like.
I think he could be doing both.
Well, of course, yeah, no, but I really like your reading as well of sticking a little bit more with the dream and the memory, and understanding this sort of loss of the poet losing himself in this space, which is very emotionally charged while being somewhat like ridiculous too.
I think the meta level of it is that he doesn't throw it in the bin and he publishes it. That is the meta level of the poem. So you enter in with him, so he is addressing us. That's what poetry does.
Yeah. I agree completely.
Api, did hold on one second, Mark. Api, did you want to add something? You were beginning.
Yeah, I actually wanted to comment on Mark. So.
No,
I'm just because we're talking about the meta reading of the whole poem, and you know, something shimmers and something is hushed up. Still thinking of what Mark was saying, which is brilliant, about, you know, the snake and all the S's. I kind of first, like before the children thing and so on, I kind of first read it as like a meta line of kind of, you know, something shimmers, something is hushed up, kind of like Ashbery saying, you know, what you're reading, you know, it's not what it looks like. There is something behind this that you may not be seeing. Because I heard like a part of an interview with him when he was much younger, and he was saying something like, you know, I always try to follow the sound of the words that I use, and, you know, what they echo and what words they resemble, and, you know, I'm trying to say something with that. So it's as if, you know, something is hushed up, something shimmers, but just shimmers, and it's not stated clearly. Maybe something that's like beyond what's on the page would be something, you know, like a whole other level of that, if that makes any sense. And I think that Mark was talking about that precisely.
Mark, did you want to add something?
To that, no, I would like to get back to what you said about the meta poem, and I agree completely that it is a meta poem. To me, this room could be paraphrased as this space, the space on the paper where I have this poem, and we enter a dream. Okay, maybe the dream allegories come in here, but was a dream of this room. Couldn't that also be another form of a wonderful room, a special room? Or it's a dream of a room, a wonderful room. I like that room. I like to be in that space, in the poem, to tell you what is in my soul, in my heart, and now I write this poem to convey a message. And then he comes to that phrase, why do I tell you these things? The you is to me certainly the reader, the one he's talking to, and the form he talks to us is the poem. You're not even here. That reminds me a bit of Ralph Waldo Emerson in Nature, the first chapter, where he says, I'm not alone, although you're not here, where he also expresses that idea. I'm writing a text, I'm alone, and I'm addressing that to you, and you will read that, and we are in a communication, we are in a dialogue, so you are also here, although you're not here. Why do I tell you these things? He thinks it's important, right?